guys, welcome back.
We're continuing on with our Embodied Catholic Leader series, and we're looking specifically now into the operating principle of discernment for the sanguine. We're considering these things through unique design. Really, we're looking at temperaments to inform us the different ways that God has designed us and how discernment will happen in a person that's a sanguine in this case. So all those sanguines that like having fun, but also discerning the best way forward, it's going to be a great podcast for you, because when we discern that vision well, we can bring people along.
Yes.
And it's not our vision, it's God's vision that we want to be bringing people along to accompany us or follow us as Catholic leaders.
Yes. I think this was actually really powerful for me, being the sanguine, going through this process.
You feel seen.
So, very seen and almost coached. So we invite all of you sanguines to come in and listen up. And anybody else who loves sanguines in their lives and they want to be more informed on how sanguines can discern.
Yeah. So hit that subscribe bell and leave us a review. Let's go into the podcast.
Hi, guys.
Welcome back.
We're going to be talking about leadership.
But let's talk about our shirts first. Erin noted, I was like, I really like our color combination here. And she was just like, yeah, it's the Chicago Bears. I was like, yes, that's what I like. Go Bears.
He's a big fan. So we did not do that on purpose, but the lighting in here makes it really bright and
It's a
noticeable.
happy accident.
So
How's
anyway.
your frothy milk coffee that you're drinking?
It's so awesome. I got one of those handheld like milk frothers, and it's just cool. Very powerful. Learned the hard way.
Not to be done on a full cup of coffee.
Yes. Or I think you're supposed to like froth the milk separately and then put it in. I don't care. I just like it foamy. So
yeah, you know what? Like the other day, we had the family come over to our house for dinner, and my nephew comes in. And he's just like, says to my sister Shannon. She tells me later. She's like, yeah, Joe came up and he was like, yeah, Uncle Matt and Aunt Erin have a bougie house, and I was like, bougie? We're not bougie. Like, I don't want to be bougie. And then the next day, the milk frother showed up in the Amazon mail, and I was like, oh my God, we're bougie. We are bougie.
Are we? What does bougie mean? Fancy?
I think it's fancy. It's bougie.
Okay.
It's like class. I don't know.
I'm like, but hold on.
Like the bourgeois.
Yes.
I don't think it's a positive thing, but moving on.
I mean, I think it kind of is. It depends on what you want. But I'm like, but are you allowed to be bougie and go shopping at thrift stores and, Salvation Army?
I don't know.
Because that's what I do.
I don't know. Why don't we just toast being bougie?
Cheers.
We'll make a toast with our frothy milk coffees to being bougie. All right. Accept
Yes.
it. Cheers. Hey. Oh, there we go. Cling. All right. Hey, back to what we're going to be focusing on here today. But before we get that, certification. We're like midway through. People are getting ready. They're taking the assessments right now, about to do the midterm quals. How's it going?
It's great. It's awesome. I love. I just love the drills. Mm-hmm. I love being a drill instructor. I mean, partially because I get to get sharp in my own coaching. Like, always return back to the foundations, right? It's always a good idea to return back to the foundations. So
fundamentals.
I get sharp again with my coaching. It's so fun. But it's a great time. Everybody's growing tremendously. That's one of my favorite things to see is how people start off. And then one of my favorite things is like the first couple of weeks are like, can we just get to this? Because we lay a lot of groundwork, a lot of foundations. We teach them a lot of what we call floating skills that they can learn that they can use throughout all coaching sessions. And not necessarily in a certain order, but they're like, come on, like, teach me how to coach. And I'm like, very soon, my little caterpillar or whatever. I don't know. What is it, butterfly?
Young grasshopper.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's it.
Young grasshopper.
That's the insect.
One of these times we have to just take the videos from like some of the calls and show the progression, like build a montage,
yes,
and set it to any song from the Rocky IV soundtrack,
yes,
and we'll make a little coaching montage.
Around,
that is Karate Kid, but that's okay. We can do that one too.
like 80s action movies.
Yes.
Okay.
Today, we're continuing on discussing discernment. This is embedded in our Becoming an Embodied Catholic Leader series. Step one of those operating principles that we dove into last week with the cleric is you got to discern the vision well. A leader receives first the vision of God. A Catholic leader receives from the vision of God. Lest we bring people along our own vision, which will not bear fruits that will last. Yeah. Only the vision that God gives will bear fruits that will last.
And you can't give what you haven't first received.
Yes.
I mean, this is something that we tell our coaches all the time. Like, coach first, pray first, and then you can give that. But in the same sense, like, you cannot give a vision to others that you haven't first received.
Yes. So part of embodying this leadership principle of discernment, we have to look at it through the lens of our mindset. Let's manage our minds in this process. But also, let's look at it through unique design. And again, with this podcast series, we're looking at temperaments to inform us in that unique design. You can also use other assessments that are there. But we're going to stick with temperaments. Today, we're going to be focusing on how the sanguine walks through the 4 steps that we have of offer, listen, act, and examine within that discernment step. Okay?
Yeah. We broke those down a little bit more, like we just broke those down in our last podcast. So if you want to hear a little bit more, we'll describe them.
You'll
like
be able
with
to
a one
keep up.
sentence.
Yes.
Each one of those steps in discernment. But if you want to hear more, you can go back to our last podcast on the cleric.
Yeah. And if you don't know what your temperament is, go into the show notes. There we have our free temperaments assessment. You can find out. I'll give you a percentage breakdown. Note up front, they won't all add up to 100, okay?
For all you melancholics out there.
But just know that you're going to it'll give you a percentage breakdown of how you scored based on the questions that were weighted towards each one of those temperaments. All right, so you can kind of follow along here as well. We'll also put a link to our temperaments report, which you can purchase real cheap, $10 in our store. That gives you a lot of breakdown. We're going to be giving you a lot of insights into how the sanguine today discerns. But you can get a lot more of the common defects and vices, virtue patterns, coaching people in the mindsets that are sanguine, contributions, ideal conditions. It's a great tool for just growing in self-awareness. And you can share that test with all of your loved ones here as well. Learn a little bit more about them. It's been great for our marriage.
Yeah, I will be the model sanguine that we will be talking about today.
The model sanguine, yes.
And so real quick, okay, so temperaments are a series of reactions and inclinations to outside stimuli, right? Or some type of effective stimuli. And for the sanguine, they react quickly, they react intensely, but with a very short duration. So they will kind of move on quickly after that. So let's say they get angry with somebody. They will be quick to forgive. Like, they will just move on and be like over it, literally over it after a certain point. They don't hang on to it. So that's helpful just to kind of explain that tendency of reactions and inclinations before we get into this with the sanguine.
Which is also why I think our journal is a great tool for the sanguine, okay? Because over time, maturation in our temperaments doesn't mean that they go away, but we kind of refine and soften some of those defects or those vices in them. So where we overreact or something like that, but then we move on quickly, oftentimes we don't really spend the time reflecting on why we overreacted, what was going on inside of us. And so the journal that we have, our mindset journal, the Metanoia Catholic Journal, is a tool that you can use for reflecting back on those instances retroactively and growing in awareness so that when those same circumstances present themselves again, you can be like, I remember last time why I reacted. Is that going on right now? Yes, it is. How do I want to react going forward? And you can actually start to build new habits based on a good, sound mindset and actually mature as a person.
Cool.
Plugs. Ready to get into it? All right, Aaron. Tell me. All right, so we look at the step one of discernment, discerning the vision, offer. That's presenting what you want, what you have, and then surrendering it to the Lord.
Yes, very much like the offertory at Mass. Like,
yes,
here it is, Lord. We have bread and wine.
Yes,
make it into your body and blood.
Yeah, presuming that there's some good that the Lord has already started moving in us, and even though there might be some weeds amongst the wheat, what's a defect that you'd say to the sanguine experiences in just entering this offertory step of discernment?
There's a hesitancy in offering their desires, not because they don't have many desires, they have a lot of desires, like a lot. And I think that's one reason why they're hesitant about it. They have a lot of thoughts and even shame about a lot of their desires.
Interesting.
So they're like, can I bring all of these things up? Like, I just picture a sanguine kind of carrying all the different loaves of bread up to the offertory at Mass.
Can I put them all out here?
Right. Like, is that okay? Can we put all of these? And like,
all of them?
And also, where do I focus type of thing? So there's that surrendering piece. I don't think they have a hard time with surrendering, but I think it's that like, man, am I allowed to have all these desires?
Do I have to pick one?
Oh, totally.
That's a little bit of the mindset we could say behind this.
100%. That's like, I can't just pick one.
So tell me,
they're all great.
All right. So how is this an obstacle to the offertory here? This desire, having lots of desires, and this, not really wanting to whittle it down to one. What's the problem? I
think they just don't bring all of them up. Like, there's this kind of shallowness in the presentation.
Okay.
Not a shallow, like being like, well, since I can't bring them all up, and I have to choose one, I might as well just like stay back here and be confused and like not bring them up.
Yeah. I'm wondering if like there's some temperaments that are kind of inclined to just, they want to be very focused and like, I'm going to discern down this path right now where it's like, so it's like, it's narrow and depth, but the sanguine is just like, no, I want to discern by considering many options on kind of a shallow level.
Yeah, there's like such an aversion for me personally to picking one lane. Like, it probably leads to my root like problem when it comes to setting goals is that inconsistency. Okay, that I would say it's like a fear of choosing, because what if I miss out? Okay,
what if I miss out? That's one of the mindsets.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, what if I miss out? Like, oh, am I going to choose the right one? Do I have to choose all of them? Do I have to choose just one? Yeah, like that brings like a lot of interior movements to me right now. I'm like, I don't want to.
So if I was ever to open up one of your metanoia journals and look at your exercise 3, goal setting with God, if I flip the page, would I be seeing a new goal every single day? Would there be a consistent goal?
Pretty often you'd be seeing a new goal.
A new goal.
Like maybe there'd be like 3 days in a row.
Yeah. So what's the problem with that?
Yeah, it's funny because just recently I started questioning that. Like, what is the problem with this? Like, and I think there's this thought like there's one right way to do it and I'm doing it wrong. Like, I think that's like, I must be doing this wrong. Yeah.
Mom, are you listening? You're not alone.
Yeah. Like there's this, I must be doing this wrong. And I noticed in reflecting, I wonder if I can share this now or if I can share it later, but even reflecting on this morning, I was journaling on this very thing. Like, like I have a lot of thoughts about always changing my goal. And just in journaling, I felt very inspired that the Lord was just like, okay, and like, what's wrong with that? But also, can the variety that you love, can that coexist in consistency?
Okay, so
with consistency.
So it's okay. So it's the inconsistency. It's kind of like jumping from focus to focus. So the point that there's not really any movement because there's not. So growth doesn't happen just like it happens inches at a time. But if like lasting growth will often take, especially if you want to grow a new habit, will take an ongoing investment. Regardless of your temperament, there's going to be an ongoing investment, ongoing willing of that new habit in order for it to actually take root and become a habit. So with that inconstancy that you're perhaps prone to as a sanguine, which is a product of having a lot of these desires and this mindset of, I don't know which one to choose. And so you just go from this to this to this to this to this, to the point where you never really build a habit through that applied consistent effort or consistent will.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So that's where it shows up as a problem. Okay.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to relationship with the Lord, speaking to the Lord about this, like the minute I realized, I was making this a problem and it really doesn't have to be a problem.
Okay.
Like the judgment of all of the desires that I have, like I was like, that must be wrong. Like I must be doing this wrong. And the minute it was like not a non-problem, it was just like I could breathe, and then I could open up to the Lord. I noticed I was blocking that relationship with him through my own self-judgment.
Which is discernment here, folks. And something we mentioned in the first podcast prior to this, we didn't really hit it today. When we talk about discernment, it's discernment is not just making a decision. It's not an event. It's a relationship. It's a relationship with the Lord. And the way that relationship oftentimes we feel inclined to just think discernment is like mission.
Yeah.
Discerning and then your mission. But Aaron, you brought up, and I think it's worth repeating here, that really the proper order is relationship and then identity and then mission. Lest we go, I'll pick my mission and then I'll discover my mission will reveal who I am. And then that's going to inform how I relate to God. It's just like, no, opposite.
Yeah.
Relationship with God, God affirms your identity. And then whatever your mission is, your vocation, how you live out who you are is always going to be who you are. It's just choosing how you're going to live out your identity, whether it's, marriage or a priesthood or working at a soup kitchen or becoming a coach or a teacher or anything like that.
And from my own experience too, it was like this morning when I was journaling on this, I felt like the Lord was like, let's go there. Let's go to that judgment. And I opened that judgment up to him, like that self-judgment, like I'm doing this wrong. And then he could speak to it, right? So that kind of moves us into the next step. But then I could listen to him. But I was just assuming that I was doing it wrong and that I had too many desires.
Yeah. So like we kind of moved through like this inconstancy as the defect. The mindset, I have too many things that I desire, right? And I don't want to leave those desires. I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to do it wrong, right? The example that you even brought up in your life was just the way that you crack open your journal. You see exercise 3 might float around, right? There might be some fluidity that's there. But then the thought on top of that is that's bad. That's wrong.
Yes.
I'm doing it wrong.
Yes.
Which is, let's bring that to the Lord, which you did. And so like if we move into application here for this step, like how does the sanguine then improve, or how did you improve in your offering, this offertory step as part of discerning as a sanguine?
Well, I think it's those questions. What if I'm not doing it wrong? What if I'm doing it like how the Lord created me? Like, right. And there was that permission to be in that identity of the sanguineness. I think a lot of sanguines can relate to me when I say, a lot of your life, you may have thought you've been doing it wrong. Like, I'm too much or not enough. Like I think maybe sanguines out there, I'd love for you guys to chat in the chat here, if you're watching this on YouTube. But like, if you relate to that, I'm too much and not enough at the same time. Like, I think that is really a big mindset. Like, I'm doing this wrong. So I think even just pausing and going, what if I'm not? What if I'm just doing it the way God created me? Because God created me as a sanguine for a reason, right? And what if I'm just kind of figuring out my way of doing this with him? Yeah.
And even that I'm too much and not enough.
Yeah.
I wonder, too, if that is something that's part of your unique design as a woman. I often hear that amongst women, regardless of their temperament. I'm too much or I'm not enough. Right? I don't commonly hear that amongst men. That's just my own anecdotal experience. Yeah. So, like, again, chat
Could
that
be.
in.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if that, again, concerning unique design, our sex is part of our unique design.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, the application, considering would be what? Considering, even now your desires, maybe the Lord does want to satisfy all your desires, right? It's good to have multiple desires. Anything else?
Yeah. Like, what if variety were a good thing? What if, and that was actually the question that was presented to me in the journaling this morning. It's like, what if variety and consistency could coexist?
Got it.
Like, do you have any, like, and then my mind went to, oh, okay, like all of the habits that I have built and have remained consistent in my life, you know, daily exercise, journaling, all this stuff, I've allowed this variety to show up.
Within the consistency.
Within the consistent task. Mm-hmm. And that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was like a cool, whatever.
Yeah, it's a bit of a both and that's
yes,
there.
Yes.
Okay. So that's some application for sanguines here to kind of like maybe put that mindset on of how could like, where does this momentum that I have, because we always want to affirm the momentum that we have. In this case, Aaron's bringing up too many desires or that desire for variety.
Yes.
Let's affirm that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And let's see if we can leverage that momentum, that movement, that motivation, and in a way that brings us into deeper relationship with the Lord so that we're authentically, honestly offering to Him the things that are truly on our heart, including all those many, many, many desires.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's step one, offering. Let's move. You ready to move on?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we got, next step is listen. So we stop talking, we quiet our mind, we listen, and we wait. And we wait. Okay. What's the trouble? How do you, as a sanguine, what's a defect that shows up that's an obstacle to entering into this step of discernment?
I think if my desire isn't engaged, I'm easily distracted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like there's thoughts like, this is boring. And at the same time, it's, anyways. But it's just kind of like there's almost this immediate abdication to everything outside of me. Everything outside of me needs to engage me, needs to be this, like the stimulating, the always stimulating piece. Anyway, I'm like going into solution mode, so I don't want to go too far with that.
Okay. But we're also in a bit of awareness mode here. So it's just like, okay, so easily distracted is this defect that shows up here. But like, why is that a problem?
It's not a problem because even just acknowledging that I'm easily distracted is telling me that my desire is not engaged.
Okay.
So it's giving me that information that my desire is not engaged. And then I go to, well, why? Like, okay, like what needs to change?
Yeah.
For my desire to be engaged.
Awesome. Here. So you're kind of already moving on to like an application here,
yes.
folks. So if you find yourself easily distracted, that could be diagnostic to, okay, I haven't really engaged my desire. Or maybe this is something that's often common among sanguines is they just don't go deep enough.
Yeah.
They keep it at kind of a sensory pleasure level
yes.
of desire, where it's like, no, like how can we go a little bit deeper here to uncover what we truly desire? And then there's a little bit more depth of motivation, and you find that ability to persevere
yes.
in the quiet a little bit longer. How's that land?
Yeah. I'm definitely, as you're like kind of painting that picture for me, I'm imagining this movement from that sensory, like that emotional, that appetitive state, that sensory appetites
yes.
state to like that rational appetite, that act of the will,
okay.
and saying like, no, when I'm convicted, when I actually allow and bring that desire to the Lord, and I allow, like, when we both kind of move together in that, I'm super engaged. Like, you almost can't break my focus at that point.
Yeah.
And so, like moving from that like, this is happy, this is good, this is that, like all these like positive emotions to that place of conviction and that action of the will.
Okay. I'm wondering even your secondary phlegmatic starting to show up here. Because again, that conviction is something that, like, I know
yes.
amongst the phlegmatics.
Moves
yeah,
you.
like you persevere once there is conviction, even if it's uncomfortable or, it's starting to rock the boat with the relationships around you. Okay. So this is kind of boring, that mindset. This doesn't really feel good. Application that you give is like affirming the good that you're seeking, or just saying, okay, let's not make this be a bad thing that I'm being distracted. Let's just choose to make it mean that I haven't engaged my desire.
Yes.
And maybe that means I need to explore that a little bit more.
Yes.
All right. So present to the Lord. Right.
I haven't engaged my desires or my motivations. And I think that's really big for a sanguine, utilizing that desire to be emotionally engaged as as your emotional fuel, and allowing that to be the case.
Okay. So you've offered a vision to the Lord in step one. And then when you're listening, if you're not engaged and you want to engage your desire a little bit more, what are some questions that you might ask to engage? Is it just, why do I want this?
No, honestly, it's okay, you're not engaged for a reason. What are you seeking right now? It's that.
Do you even want
simple.
this?
Yeah. Do you want this? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. How many times have I wasted time and energy on goals that I felt like I needed to want? Mm-hmm. And even just in journaling, the Lord was like, why do you want this? And if I can't answer it very quickly, and if it's painstaking for me to answer that question, it's okay, I probably really don't want this. I feel like I should want this.
Should.
Yeah.
Not a good should.
Yeah, and I think there's that natural tendency to docility that that Sanguine has. Is that you are docile to the Lord, you are obedient. Mm-hmm. But very few times have we been questioned, what is it that you want?
Okay. What is it
that you really want? And there can be more than one desire here. Mm-hmm. There's no rules with this. Just start throwing them out there.
Yeah. Be very creative, paint a really good picture that you want. I mean, you might have to go back to that offertory step. That's kind of what you reveal. It's okay, maybe there was a deficiency in that offertory step. I wasn't really fully honest. It was more of a should offertory than something I truly desired.
Or that people pleasing, right. I should want this, and okay, this is what good Catholics do.
Cool. All right. But then once you find that conviction and it's something that you really desire and you're inflaming that desire, and again, we're still offering this to the Lord. And there's kind of, I think, you might be listening and say, do we really want to fan the flames of a desire? Because then that's going to breed attachment to it. It's no. Step one is the offertory. The offertory is presenting to the Lord. Part of that is letting go of the offering.
Being honest.
And leaving it at the altar and saying and having that act of the will, that disposition is this is the best that I can think of right now, but Lord, make it better. So the detachment is something that's important. Just because we feel desire isn't always mean that there's an attachment that's there. When there's fear showing up at not getting it, that's often indicative of an attachment that's there. Because it's okay, why is this so important? Why do we need this so much? But again, part of discernment is you want to be able to have that nice disposition, letting go. The St. Ignatius, being that reed in the wind, kind of blow one way or the other as the Lord moves you, but having that detachment from things. That's why the offertory is important. But it doesn't mean that we can't have preference.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, okay, so this is a great application. It's this ability to share all of the desires and going, I know it's a lot, Lord, and here, you asked for it. So you're writing all your desires out, and then pausing. And this is so simple, but it really works in my own journaling. It's just pausing and going, what do you want the most? Because it's for me, that just feeds my soul, because I'm I want to be in communion with the Lord. I want that direction in that moment, and being I like them all. They will all do for me. But Lord, what do you want? Because I know that's going to be the best. I really do know that's going to be the best. And I want to be in communion with you here. That, that natural, that sanguine natural propensity for that relationship. I think that's really helpful here.
Yes, and there's just trust even in that surrender here. It's it's there's a presumption here. And folks, if you have a tough time with the trust, lean into that a little bit more. Bring that up to the Lord. I'm having a tough time trusting you.
Yes.
And know this, it may be acts of trust that are the beginning of this relationship. I mean, I'm choosing to trust you. I don't really feel like you're trustworthy.
That's your offertory.
But I'm also choosing to trust you. Lord, I know you can take this and I know you can transform it. But it's very humble, right? To just make those acts of the will. And that's the beginning of belief here, folks, here as well. And this is where we can start. We've got a whole workshop in the Academy that's all about building beliefs, right? So that one comes to mind. Okay, so we got an application here. For our listen, Psalm 139 is another one of those Psalms. Lord, you have searched me. Oh, Lord, you know me. I love this because it gets down to the depths of desire. We're not singing at a surface level. We're like, you knit me in my mother's womb. You fashioned me in the depths.
Yeah.
Like this is deep desire that we're getting in touch with.
Yeah, and I think a really healing moment in my own journey was kind of loosening that shame around that ache, around desire, like loosening that shame around desire. And understanding that, at the very bottom of all this desire is a desire for the Lord. It's this insatiable desire for infinity. And our pathway there is bringing all of those other pieces up to him and saying it to him and being like, I desire this. I know it's weird, whatever, but I desire it, and like telling him and leaving it there and working with him on it. And then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And so I think I love that you have searched me, O Lord, because he knows about all of your desires. He's not like shocked.
He put them there.
Right.
He put them there. Okay. The devil doesn't have his own clay. He does not create desire. He distorts desire.
Yes.
Right. But he doesn't have his own clay. All right. God is the father of our desires. Fallen world, we got to discern them, but we don't just throw them out and cast them aside because we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. Act. Step 3 of the discernment process. What are some of the... So here we're taking massive action. Again, taking massive action doesn't mean that we're taking huge steps, but we're just starting to move. We're moving. Yes. We're moving to a place where we're doing things, we're engaging with our environment, and there's going to be accompanied by discernment and examination, which is step 4 here. But taking the massive action, what's the obstacle? What's a defect that sanguine, a common defect that sanguine or that you might experience to really entering into this step of discernment?
Well, I mean, I think this step is so contingent upon the first 2. So let's just say, the sanguine never presents their desire to the Lord and they kind of stay shallow and distracted by all the things. It's going to look like unfocused action, right?
Okay.
That's what it's going to be like all over the place.
I'll do this.
Right. I mean, I don't know if anyone can relate to me out there, but it's like this, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I want to do this for a job. I want to do this for a job. I was bored there, and all of this stuff. And for me, whenever somebody brings that up to me, because that was me, by the way, there's this. I always want to pause and say, like, okay, like, have you asked the Lord? Like, have you actually presented all of your desires and asked the Lord? Because all of that unfocused action is telling me something.
Yes, and and even in that unfocused action, I wonder what is even. So we're saying we're going all over, like try this. What is driving this? I'm wondering if it's just kind of you're being led by your appetites at that point.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, that didn't feel right.
Got it.
Right.
Led
when
by your
I'm
feelings.
convicted, okay, so in these certain situations where, like, I'll use the example of becoming a coach, right?
Oh, goodness. Yes. You were driven.
Right. And it's like, okay, because there was such conviction, I brought it to the Lord. I said, here are all my desires about this. Now, this is just reflection. Like, literally, this is just coming up to me. So, yeah. But, like, bringing all my desires to the Lord, I'm like, I know they seem silly. Like, life coach, what the heck is a life coach? And, like, like, had all these thoughts about that. But when I so clearly knew that the Lord was saying to me, Aaron, impart what I have given you, impart to others what I have given you. It was like I had my marching orders. I was like, all right. And it excited me.
Do it.
Because I knew I had to be in relationship with him the whole time.
So suddenly you were focused action.
Yes.
And that particular focused action, which was born from this conviction, that was born from really listening to your own desires and what was moving in you and what the Lord was moving in you.
I mean, it happened in the journal.
That came through this purification.
I slowed it down. I focused.
Yes. Okay. So like you started to really move into this action that was much more convicted, not being led around by your emotions in that moment, but really being driven by, reason, right?
Well,
Something that was a good desire.
And it wasn't like this journey lacked discomfort or fear. It was like full of it. But I had to keep going back to that like, yes, like this is so much more, this actually feels way better.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy, like being dragged all around by my appetites, but like it feels so much better because there's meaning and purpose and a fullness behind it.
Yes. When we start acting in accord with God's design and God's plan for our life, we're going to feel that peace of just being aligned, right?
Peace.
This is John Paul II saying, become who you are. This is it. Like St. Catherine saying, become who you are and you set the world on fire. Like become who you are is the same thing about becoming a saint. I was listening to Josh Miller's book, Unrepeatable. Phenomenal book. Such a phenomenal book. And he was talking about Saint Gianna, who really gave her life for her fourth child. And there's this line in the book where he says that Gianna didn't become a saint because she did something that was difficult that most people wouldn't have done, right? Giving her life for her child. Gianna became a saint because she became who she was. It was a fullness of who she was. And you can even look at the trajectory of her life where she was a doctor. She was a pediatrician that wanted to preserve the life of children. And so here it was like,
it was like a fruition of
fulfillment of preserving the life of children of her. She laid down her life. She became fully who she was. And so like there's a peace, even when you're going to really uncomfortable places with that, there's still a peace and a conviction that was there. And she was
beautiful.
The way she said to her family was like, if it comes down, if I'm out, if I'm unconscious, and if it comes down to my life or this baby's life, you choose this baby's life.
Yeah.
You choose this baby's life.
Yeah. Suddenly this image is coming to me. I like using the example of becoming a coach because there's this memory that's coming up for me. And it's like, I remember asking the Lord for permission to be a coach and go to a secular school, which I had a lot of thoughts about too, like a secular mindset coaching school. And I was like, ugh. And I very clearly remember just in receiving in prayer, just the Lord just being like, well, you can go. You're just going to have to remain really close to me. And I was like, deal. Like, yes.
All right,
I get to do this.
Okay.
But then that permission to desire this, to desire the coaching thing, to desire this coaching way, it opened up that all of a sudden I started noticing all of the times in my life where I coached people. It was like all these like connections started happening.
It was like an M. Night Shyamalan ending.
Yeah, it was like, it's like
that's
all
why.
throughout like high school, just people bearing their souls to me. And like, it just always happened when I was doing hair, people would just be like, letting me coach them. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just like listening and whatever. And it just, it was like a confirmation.
Yeah. Sounds not boring.
Totally not boring.
Yeah.
Oh my God, opposite.
Which is the opposite of like when you're going all over the place and the thought is like, I'm going to go all over the place and follow my base appetitive desires here because that's exciting, right? There's novelty. It's stimulating, but here there's no real depth. Now we get down to the depth. We get down to the depth because we've gone to a depth of desire that's grounded in who you are. And again, this goes back to relationship first, identity, then mission here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can see this even being in your story, and same thing with St. Gianna. Like the relationship with the Lord came first, then the identity. I'm a coach. I'm a mom who lays down her life for her children. And then the mission, right? That's the witness that you're going to leave to the world. Folks, that's fruits that will last. That's fruits that will last.
And like Matt said, it's anything but boring.
Yeah, it is super duper exciting. Okay, so like, I think we got into a little bit of the application there for action here. Anything you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think if you are taking unfocused action, consider your desire and bring them to the Lord. Like, go back to that first step.
Yeah. Yep. Love it. Love it. Okay, finally, step 4, we examine. All right, so again, we're reflecting on the fruits of your actions with the Lord. All right, reflecting on the fruits with the Lord. All right, not just consulting ourselves, not just consulting a friend, but really reflecting on them with the Lord. What's an obstacle that you say, Aaron, that you deal with as a sanguine? Maybe some other sanguines identify with this as well. To a defect to entering into this final step of discernment.
Well, one of the main defects of sanguineness, not every sanguine has this. Hannah is one of them. She always follows up. But most sanguines, or many sanguines, have a hard time with follow through. So it's like, oh yeah, let's get this thing going, right? Mm-hmm. They are the initiators. They're the ones who, have that momentum in the beginning. But then the follow up, like the minute I think, after action, like that means I have to.
Boring.
Not even boring. It's just like, what if I'm on to the next thing? It's just like, I don't have time for this.
I'm not going to do that same thing again anyways.
Right. I think my ideation's coming in there, but yeah, so there's that piece of, follow up. It's just like that lack of follow up, for me. Yeah.
Okay. So the lack of follow up. What's the problem with that? Let me rephrase that question. What's the problem with that in terms of entering into a deeper relationship through the examination of the actions?
Yeah, it's just leaving behind the relationship. Like it's just you're moving on to the next thing. You're probably following your appetites again, moving on. Yeah,
you're not really also recognizing where the Lord showed up, right? Christ says, by the fruits you shall know them. So we don't always know with this certainty that we're going down the right path until we see the product of going down that path. All right. And so we can sense that product a little bit more, because it's and when I say the product, it's like the outcome of your actions that you've done.
Yes.
All right. You can look at the fruits and you can start to classify those as, are they good? Are they bad? And it's not just based on my merits and my judgment, but like based on divine revelation, based on what Christ has said, based on the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Are those things showing up here, or is there an absence of those things? And if we don't consider that, then we're really we're missing out on the goal in the first place, why we're discerning. And we're not necessarily identifying where the Lord was speaking so that we can recognize the shepherd's voice, right? My sheep know me. They know my voice and they know me, right? We're not really learning how to recognize the shepherd's voice. We're just, listening to whatever voice is out there at this point. But you're going to be very akin to knowing the Lord's voice through this process of examine. How does that land as I share that as a non-sanguine?
Yeah. I think just looking at tasks is not really appealing to me anyway. It's like, what did I do? Like all of those. I think that's interesting. But I think for me, maybe a goal that could actually help a sanguine move into that place of examine would be, I really want to know if this desire was from the Lord.
Why? Really want to know if this desire was from the Lord.
Yeah. And so by their fruits, you shall know them.
Okay.
Type of, so it's more of that curiosity of being like,
okay.
You think about all of the issues up front, all those questions of bringing your desires to the Lord. We're like, am I doing this right? That kind of thing. This step will answer your question.
Okay. Why is doing the bidding of the Lord why is it so important that the desire that you're acting upon is united with the Lord, from the Lord?
Because that's the fulfillment of all of your desires.
Okay.
That's right. The very thing that you do a lot, which is desire as a sanguine, it would make the most sense for you to go to the place who gives you that fulfillment. And I don't know. It just seems wise that way to do that.
I wonder how here even you could leverage the sanguine's natural inclination to relationship and conversation as part of and leveraging that motivation to move into the examine, which may seem otherwise a little rote and routine and, something that you're not necessarily prone to do, dwelling in the past versus moving on. How does that relationship maybe you can leverage that to examine?
Yeah. I think relationship is so natural for the sanguine that It's just something that's assumed.
Got
It's
it.
like, yeah, I think it's a driving force for sure, but it's just kind of like, well, yeah, then I get to be close to, like, I get to just have this conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we forget that as sanguines. We forget the closeness of our Lord. And like how I remember this image really helping me in my own prayer. And I remember somebody just saying, like, just picture the Lord's ear right next to your mouth. Not like a floating ear, like it's attached to his head, you know, it's attached to him. But like, picture that so close to you, you know, and before you pray. And that was helpful for me because it was like, oh, okay, yes.
This person I'm talking
That's
to.
the one thing. He's the one that we need to be focused on. Like we get to draw into that relationship with him. So I think there's just that as an application is super helpful. Anyway, it was helpful for me. But
So the examine step could actually be something that helps draw you deeper into a relationship with the Lord?
for sure.
Okay. Or even recognize those areas where he was that you didn't see prior to that.
Yeah. I love the series of questions, and I'm going to share these with you, and I'm going to tell you why I like it in this order too. But it's what worked, what didn't work, and what would we do differently. And I know I've shared this before on the podcast, but the reason why I like this order for the sanguine is what comes first, what worked. We like positivity. We like looking at the things that worked, right? And there's kind of that, even though we're being invited into this like deliberation and this like strategic way of like looking at this moving forward, it's still like, Lord, what worked here? And now there's that relationship element when you bring that into prayer. Lord, what worked? And then there's the let's focus on what like the winning looked like for a second, you know? And then it goes into, okay, so what didn't work? And then that final question, which is what would I do differently? There's that strategic movement or what should we do differently?
Got it.
Lord.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So there's an application for how the sanguine might enter into that final step of discernment, examine. Let's wrap this up here, Erin. So what did we talk about today?
I don't know. I kind of felt like I just got coached a little bit. I mean, we had seen some notes, but like most of this was very, really, I was like feeling coached.
Do you feel seen?
Totally.
Dude, let's do it.
Totally.
Yeah, so we walked through these steps here for the sanguine. Remember, those steps are offer, right? Then we listen, then we act, and then we examine, right? And it's a bit of a rinse and repeat, right? So somewhat of a linear process if it helps you to remember them that way, but just also know that discernment is going to be somewhat circular, right? So you might find yourself, like we were sharing earlier today, in the listening phase, and as a sanguine being like, okay, I feel very distracted, so I'm going to go back, and maybe there's a problem in my offertory. I wasn't really offering a true desire there. Maybe
Or
Lord,
all of my desires.
yeah,
there,
Lord,
you know?
reveal to me everything that you want laid on this altar right now so that you can take it and bring it, orient it towards that which would truly satisfy, right? Because you satisfy the desires of my hungry, hungry, hungry heart. Okay.
What's that line from Scripture? What's it? Desire the Lord first, and then all these are...
Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you.
Is that right? Or
Matthew
a
6.
delight in the Lord, and he will give you all the...
He'll give you the desires of your heart.
Yes, there you go. That's a good one.
I look it up. Word
people.
and scripture. Yeah, so check that out. Something is like delight in the Lord. He'll give you
Yeah.
I don't know if that's paraphrasing. Anyways, go check it out. We all got Google.
Yes.
Take a look. Okay. So yeah, and we considered, again, we're considering this, not just, everybody can use this for how to discern better as a sanguine, but we're looking at this in the context also of our leadership series. What's a leader do? That first operating principle, they discern the vision.
Yes.
Discern the vision. Okay. So we want to make sure that the vision as Catholic leaders that we're receiving is from God. All right. And then we want to embody that vision. The way that we embody that vision, we consider that through our mindsets, right? How we're kind of choosing to think and perceive the vision and receive it in our own, be a student of our own receiving of that vision, but then also consider through unique design. That's where we're focused on the temperaments here, because you've got some natural dispositions, and those don't go away, right? When you receive the vision, you receive that vision, and you're going to live that out based on God's unique design. That's how people are going to see it and experience that vision being made flesh in you, the leader. Cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So thanks for sticking around. Next week, we will be talking about melancholic.
Let's do melancholics next.
Yeah.
All right. So like and subscribe on this. If you're watching on YouTube, ring that bell, whack that bell, whatever we do. Touch the bell, click the bell so that you get notifications.
So weird. This creating such weird images in my mind of just whacking a bell or touching it. It's just like, ring it. Ring the bell.
Ring that bell. Ring the bell with your mouse clicker.
Yes.
There. Or with your thumb if you're on. Anyways, and then you'll get all these things delivered to your inbox. A little notifications will pop up. Also helps us to climb the charts. So if you found this beneficial, more people can find this beneficial. If you're listening on iTunes or anything like that, please leave us a review, give us a comment, thumbs up, share with your friends and family. And you can take that temperaments assessment here as well. All right, so check out the show notes, take the temperaments assessment. You can also get that report. $10 gives you tons of insight, great starting point. I'm amazed by how many people have downloaded that report.
Yes.
At this point.
Yeah.
Solid resource.
Yes. Or how many people have taken the assessment?
I think we're well over 6,000 people at this point that are just plowing through that thing.
Yeah.
Which is great. And more people are doing it because we have our Catholic Coaching Foundation's graduates that have been trained in how to do our temperaments workshop that are starting to do it at parishes, at their universities, at their places of work. They're doing it with their families and loved ones. What a treat.
Well, I mean, even if you have a group of people that you are like sending this temperaments test to, and you're like, hey, let's get together. Like one thing that we've offered to some of our coaches to take people through, and you guys can certainly do this on your own, but go through our podcast series on temperaments and like do it like a book club, kind of like come together and just, discuss. It's just a beautiful way of like learning about other people and learning about yourself. So yeah, certainly.
Reflect on the unique design. You start to contemplate the designer, which is cool. All right. Stick around. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking with us in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. If you like what you heard,
please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.